Alright, so next round, the other two rounds I showed were from the mocks, but there weren't really any other interesting rounds, just me getting trounced by blue-white flash. So this is from a league with a slightly different deck list, but pretty much the same, just a few slight changes in the sideboard, and we're up against Sea Coverage Maria, who I believe is from Magic the Ametrine. So this is a more interesting match as well. And we are on the draw with a great hand. Not that great though. It is technically 5 lands with a tune, but Harness Lightning Chandra isn't that bad of a start in pretty much every matchup, except against a control deck, of course. It's pretty terrible against a control deck, especially if you draw lands off the top beyond that point. So we're in a bit of a pickle. So I just decided to throw down Chandra, YOLO Chandra, which, I mean, our opponent's never tapping out, so this might be our best chance at just winning the game. Of course it doesn't work, which I don't expect it to, and now we're just sitting with absolute nothing. We do have Spawning Bed, which is kind of our saving grace, though, at this point. And our other saving grace is that our opponent doesn't have any card draw, which is huge. A huge factor for us still being in the game. So Vessel resolves, and we're not revealing our Spawning Bed yet. We want it to be a secret. And we find Whirler Virtuoso and decide to just play Spawning Bed and activate it, which is pretty good. This accomplishes two things. I could have double Whirler Virtuoso this turn, but that makes Torrential Gearhulk very powerful. Like, we're just going to lose to Torrential Gearhulk, Void Shattering a Whirler Virtuoso here, if that happens. Now we've made Torrential Gearhulk very awkward since it isn't flashing back anything, and we still get to activate Spawning Bed. And our opponent's stuck on land, which is also a good saving grace here. So end of turn, we activate the Spawning Beds and draw Ulamog, which we can exactly cast. So I start by attacking in. Now, obviously first instinct is play the Ulamog, and here's why I don't think you do that. First of all, the big factor is, of course, Summary Dismissal. If we get Summary Dismissaled here, we've wasted our Ulamog. Our opponent, so if the Ulamog gets Torrential Gearhulked, say, we take out the 2 islands, Ulamog gets Void Shattered. We take our opponent off of blue, which is very good, but still doesn't immediately win us the game. We still might be in trouble. I mean, the Ulamog's chance of resolving is virtually nil at this point. It's almost certainly getting countered. Now, we could end up just winning the game by land screwing our opponent, but if they draw a blue source, if they have answers to these in the form of mass removal, which they can still cast, like Fumigate, Radiant Flames, what have you, we're in trouble. So ideally I want this to resolve, and our opponent's on constricted on mana, doesn't have card drawing spells, so waiting seems like a better option to me for now. And we actually have a good clock as well. We're kind of just waiting for our opponent to act first, since we're the ones with the clock. Of course, we get Radiant Flames, and now we can't cast Ulamog. The thing is, we're going to be casting Ulamog this game. It's almost a certainty we'll be casting Ulamog this game, because there's no way the game's ending before we get to 10 lands. So here I resolve a Whirler Virtuoso, which I am happy to do, and I kind of overcommit with the Servant. I'm not a big fan of the Servant play in retrospect, and it just gets swept up in the Radiant Flames, but we are generating a good bit of energy now. And there's the second Whirler Virtuoso, and we've already dealt with 2 mass removal spells and have a nice stockpile of energy to go with. And this does in fact get Harnessed Lightning. So we're assuming there's no more mass removal, or hoping there's no more mass removal. So we are going to go in with Thopters. So we start with 4, and then even make another one by turning our own Harnessed Lightning into a Thopter, which seems good since we have redundant lightnings. And Attune is actually not a terrible draw. We're going to get Blessed Alliance, but we don't really mind all that much. And now we're only 1 land away from casting Ulamog again. And swing with the Thopters and get Blessed Alliance again. So now we know this is our chance to pounce. We aren't getting summary dismissaled, which is basically what we wanted all along. That's all we ever wanted, was to not get summary dismissaled. We get to hit the 2 blue sources for sure, and we have a clock. And that prompts the concession. So, I mean, this game would have looked incredibly different if we would have Ulamogged immediately and got summary dismissaled. We would have lost all our spawning tokens for free. We would have got no value out of Ulamog. Of course, it could have just worked, and then we would have won if our opponent, since our opponent didn't really have. Well, they could have still cast Radiant Flame. This game went well for me, I would say. As for sideboarding, again, our deck list is slightly different from before. Here we want negates, counters. We saw Void Shatter, so we know Ceremonious Rejection isn't dead. Root Out is reasonable since it kills Torrential Gearhulk, but if that's all our opponent has, it's probably not worth it. So we basically want this. As for siding out, we can get rid of some Harnessed Lightnings, can get rid of Puzzle Knots even. Oops, there goes everything. We want all our Drowsies, all our threats. Tormenting Voice is risky. The thing about Harnessed Lightning is it can be very good if our opponent's playing Spellqueller or some other form of weird creature, but terrible otherwise. So if you haven't seen creatures, maybe just hedge and keep 1, and then 1 Tormenting Voice, and then bring in this. Maybe even keep. The Tormenting Voices are better on the play when they can't get countered. But 1 Ceremonious Rejection is fine to start with, and then pretty much any of these are reasonable as your final card back in the main deck. Tormenting Voice is probably the most versatile. Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot is the best with Marvel, and Harnessed Lightning is the best against creatures. So any of these would be fine, honestly. Tormenting Voice probably worse on the draw. Harnessed Lightning probably slightly better on the play. Alright, so a good hand here on the draw. We do have a Tormenting Voice. And we set up some vessels that we're going to be just happy to crack for a while, and especially on this turn we don't really want to cast anything. On turn 4, casting something at least denies Glimmer of Genius, but on turn 3 it doesn't really deny much except possibly Anticipate. Alright, Spawning Bed is going to be good, hopefully, again, and this turn we want to deny the Glimmer. Of course we get Spellquellered, which we don't happen to have an answer for. I'm not even sure if I did have any Harnessed Lightnings. I might have just slided them all out, not even thinking of Spellqueller. So that's going to be great, unless we resolve Chandra. Here I go for the Tracker. Unfortunately I get rebuffed, which is the most awkward thing in the world, since you want to play Tracker before you play your lands, and then you get rebuffed and feel terrible. So we're slowly getting beat down by the Spellqueller. Of course we get to activate Vessel again and get an Ishkana. Now we still don't have double red for Chandra. We don't really want to cast Tormenting Voice and just discard something random. So I decided to go with Aetherworks Marvel. It's kind of a bait spell at this point. I'm expecting it to get countered, and we don't really have any energy, so I'm okay with it getting countered. I'm just kind of doing things at this point because we don't want our opponent to cast Glimmer. We don't want them to find Lance. So we just want to sort of trade resources. We're happy to do that. And here I go with Ishkana. Again, expecting it to get countered, and it does. Ceremonious Rejection would have been perfect there. And we finally find a negate. So we're running out of bait at this point, and negate is not even going to allow that to resolve. And now we're looking to be dead. Since the Spellqueller beatdown is very real at this point, and we haven't been able to resolve Chandra. So there's Emrakul, which we can't cast. So I go with Tormenting Voice, discarding Chandra, which I probably should have just discarded Ulamog, since resolving Chandra would be a huge deal at any point. So I don't really like that discard all that much. So here I'm still not feeling good. I get to counter Glimmer and set up for Emrakul though. And now we have 7 card types, so we are casting Emrakul next turn. Although we are at 4. So Summary Dismissal just gets us at this point. We just lose to Summary Dismissal. And we can attune first as well, because we can still cast it off of Servant, even if the attune gets countered. So Harnessed Lightning, that's a good start for us. Happy to see that. And again, Harnessed Lightning, which is again perfect for us. Emrakul actually resolving is huge, because now we know we'll get to unlock a Whirler Virtuoso minimum. And then another Harnessed Lightning drawn is, of course, also incredible for us. So we get to drain all the energy, unlock a Whirler Virtuoso, block a Spellqueller, and then get another Whirler Virtuoso. And now we are looking to be very well favored. Barring any Flame Lashes to the face. And Port Town doesn't even allow for Torrential Gearhulk, which is also a huge deal. So we know about the Spellqueller. We don't want to die to the Spellqueller or the Fumarole. And just Spellqueller end of turn, draw nothing, and we have won. We also could have Spawning Bedded. I didn't want a Servant, obviously, because it would have just got Spellquelled, so I just kept some Thopters and Spawning Bed tokens in the back pocket and pulled it out a victory.